Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Brian Malone. I'm the Customer Success Manager for the North American East region here at Hypothesis. While she's not on the call, or she's not among the panelists today, my colleague Jessica George is your Customer Success Manager for anybody on the North American West. What that means is we are here to support you in any one-on-one faculty implementation, so instructional design consultations around implementing hypothesis in your classes. We also run training, so if you're here and in a role where you are able to organize customized trainings for the faculty at your school or for your instructional design team, we also offer those. So please feel free to get in touch with us if we can support you in any way in using Hypothesis at your institutions. I'm joining you from the Hartford, Connecticut area. Before I joined Hypothesis about 6 months ago, I was an instructional designer at a couple different institutions. And for all that, I was an English teacher. I taught writing and linguistics. So it's a bit about my background, and looks like our number of people coming in has steadied out, so I'm very excited to talk with you all today about the secret to summer course success, transforming learning through annotation. We are also joined by Lenny, who may or may not make more appearances. We never know. I'm going to go ahead and drop our slides in the chat. Um, so please feel free to follow along if you're interested in doing so. And let's get into it. If you have a question throughout today's webinar, please go ahead and use the Q&A function. I I have some colleagues of mine on the call who are going to help answer any sort of like logistical questions, or if you want links to something or want to know how to get in touch with us. But if you have any questions about like the tool itself or its functionality or pedagogical applications, I'm probably going to hold those until the end, but please do feel free to put them in the Q&A. We will have time for conversation at the end of today. Um, so uh, we also offer closed captioning today. So if you want to select the show caption menu or item on the menu, you can do so. Um, and I'm introduced myself already. So today we're going to talk about first, what is hypothesis? Then we're going to talk about why you might use social annotation. Then we'll get into a brief demo of the tool. Most of the people on the call today are already hypothesis users, but there may be different levels of familiarity with the tool, so we'll do a very, very brief overview. And then I really want to focus on summer course challenges for the bulk of our presentation and how Hypothesis can offer solutions to those challenges. So why would you use social annotation in your courses in the first place? Well, here at Hypothesis, our main goal is to make course readings annotatable. So when you are a faculty member who assigns a reading in PDF format to your students, or as a YouTube video with transcripts, we have an overlay that goes right over that text and media and allows students to annotate directly over the text in that media and build conversation as the course goes on, or as they get through the reading. So students are coming in, they're annotating directly over the reading, and they're building conversation with their classmates in this overlay on the right-hand side. Um, Beyond that, what we say is hypothesis makes reading active, visible, and social. And these really are the reasons that I was so excited to join Hypothesis when I had the opportunity to do so, because reading is typically a passive activity. We kind of assign the reading, we hope the students do it. We don't really get any insight into how much engagement they have with the reading. And we may have a class conversation or a discussion board conversation, but all of it's existing in this space that's separate from the text. Hypothesis changes all of that. We now are able to engage with students like they're gonna, it's, it happens asynchronously, but they're leaving comments right on the text. We see that those comments, so we have insight into the literacy process, and every student in the class now has a voice. Every student in the class can engage at their own sort of rate and level of comfort, but everybody in the class is able to participate in ways that are just harder to facilitate in discussion boards or class discussion or in-class discussions. So I'm very excited about those things because, of course, we know that a sense of community and uh, a, sense that your voice matters in the class. These are key indicators of retention, and so our tool's really working on that front. But yeah, the main kind of takeaways there, we're providing space for student voices and we're anchoring class discussions directly into the text, directly over the text. So I'm gonna go ahead and share the slides again because we've had about 12 more people join. There's about 60 of you on the call today, so thank you so much for coming. Uh, Hypothesis, we've done some case study work with Hypothesis just to measure our efficacy in courses. And with one such case study with the University of Texas, Austin, just by including Hypothesis in course texts, we saw 5 times longer engagement on those texts. So students are spending more time with the reading when you have social annotation incorporated. And there was some research done in 2019 about student engagement with social annotation, and 70% of students are saying that it helps them learn, it helps them feel connected, and it helps them work through ideas together. So the tool is really building community, and it's really increasing time with the text that we assign. And before I get into the specifics around summer course uh, uses, um, I want to show you briefly the tool. Again, most of the people on this call today are already users of the tool, and so you probably know that we support all of the major LMSs. If you're interested in a getting started session, we offer those for Canvas, Blackboard, Brightspace, Moodle, all the major LMSs. We can offer trainings to your school, or we can do one-on-one support as well. So I'm going to stop my screen share really briefly, just so I can get some course spaces pulled up. Okay. Okay. So this is an example of a reading that is using hypothesis. We see throughout the text, there's all these different highlights. All of those highlights are related to specific annotations. So if we select those highlights on the right-hand overlay, we'll filter right down to them. But if we look through the right-hand overlay over here, this is the hypothesis tool. And what we're seeing is some different conversations happening throughout these replies. So the reason I like to demo this particular assignment is because the demo instructor here is doing some really powerful things, which is the demo instructor is really using the ability to leave their own annotations to teach through the text. So we have some questions like, why do you think Sharon reached this conclusion? What other conclusions would be reasonable? And we see that the students are starting to reply to those. Um, we also have the demo instructor asking people to bring in outside sources. What's the most authentic pizza commercial you can find? If we open these replies, we have the students linking out to different videos. So we work with YouTube video embeds. We also work with, you can use images in your annotations. Um, we have a tagging functionality that helps you kind of organize the types of responses that you're seeing and leaving. Um, and so it doesn't have to be just text-based is kind of the point there. Um, and to leave an annotation is quite simple. You just highlight the text that you want to annotate. You'll select annotate, and we'll have a basic text editor here that allows you to do things like bold, italicize, quote, link, add an image. And if you use equations at all, we also support LaTeX language, some basic numbering and bullet points. And a spoiler that we're going to come back to later is we recently launched our at mentions. So you'll find in the text editor now the little at symbol that's going to open up everybody else in this course. And I can choose from there, or I can simply type the at symbol and the same thing will come up. So I can find the person who I want to tag and mention. Um, and when I post, that person is going to receive a notification that they've been mentioned in a hypothesis assignment. So that's a new feature that we have now. So beyond the basic sort of overview of the tool, the other thing I wanted to make sure I highlighted today was the um, the instructor dashboard. This is also a relatively new feature. I think we're coming up on a year or so of this being out. And this instructor dashboard does a few things for you. You are able to filter between all of your different courses, all of your different assignments, all of the sections within those classes, and the students within those classes. So we are able to get an at-a-glance view of when students last launched the activity, how many annotations and replies they have left. We can sort by ascending or descending order there. And this also works with um, our auto participation grading feature. So if, for example, you tell the tool that we want a total of 5 annotations and replies from the students, but this student, Alan, has done 4 out of the 5, then we automatically calculate a grade. You can choose to send that grade back to your gradebook or not. You can also choose to go in and do some quality control and quality review of Alan's annotations before you determine a grade. But we do have this feature in place that allows you to get an at-a-glance view of the level of activity and whether students have met the requirement for annotations and replies that you asked for. So with that, I'm going to stop my share again, and I'm going to go back into our slideshow. And just because we have had another 10 or so people join, I'll go ahead and share those slides again in the chat. Okay, so we're going to kind of focus now on what you all came here for, which is some specific summer course challenges. And there's, many aspects of teaching a summer course, but through the lens of like the role of hypothesis in those classes, we wanted to focus on a couple of specific challenges. Those challenges include condensed terms. We have less time with the students to deliver our content. So how can we engage and assess students in a manner that's similar to traditional length terms? We're also dealing possibly with some distractions. Students are just coming off of a full academic year. Their level of knowledge about this topic can be wide-ranging. Their level of interest can be wide-ranging. Their amount of responsibilities out of class might be wide-ranging. And the weather's really good usually. So there's lots of reasons students might be distracted or potentially burned out. And so we're also kind of dealing with that challenge. And another challenge is assessment management. How do we design summer courses with a manageable teaching load? So those are kind of the things we're thinking about when we think about hypothesis role in a summer course. And the solutions that hypothesis can offer include the following. We want to focus on identifying course sticking points and on determining engagement frequency, building community and knowledge co-creation. Okay, throughout these slides, for those of you that are following along on the slideshow, um, you'll notice this like pencil and paper icon throughout some of these slides. These are going to bring you to assignment instructions on our website. So for all of these sample assignments I'm about to go over, we actually have instructions written out already. You're welcome to copy and paste those and modify them for your context. You don't even need to credit us for that. We just wanted to give you a way to get started with using Hypothesis easily if you've not done so already. So please look out for that link, and you'll find resources on our website that will take you to specific assignment instructions. So again, identifying course sticking points. What do we mean by that? Well, we're talking about the ability to highlight, and I do see a raised hand. So thank you. If you have a question, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A. As we mentioned, we've got some teammates that are going to help out and answer the Q&A if they are able to. So this is a good, yeah, I see a question in there already that says, how can instructors access the instructor dashboard? These are great questions. My team will answer some of these. Um, oh my gosh, am I not screen sharing? I am so sorry, everybody. Thank you so much. So I am keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. Okay, are we seeing the proper screen now? Yeah, I think you are. Okay, I'm going to back up a minute just because it sounds like you may not have all seen what I was showing. So what we're talking about are those 3 areas of challenges with summer courses, so shortened terms, distracted students, and managing assessments. And the solutions that we're looking at are identifying core sticking points, determining engagement frequency, building community and knowledge co-creation. And what I was mentioning earlier is there's this paper and pencil icon that's going to lead you to different resources on our website where we have some pre-written instructions. So thank you to whoever mentioned that you weren't seeing the screen share. I really appreciate that. And hopefully backing up here has helped you get a better sense of what I've been talking about. So the first solution we wanted to talk about was this identifying course sticking points. Um, and I will get to your questions at the end of today's presentation, so please keep them coming. I do see quite a few in the Q&A already. I really appreciate that. Uh, and I will get back to those shortly. So what we're really talking about with identifying course sticking points is helping students identify the key takeaways that you wanted to mention in your readings. Like you included these readings for a reason. You want the students to gravitate towards specific kind of key takeaways, or this is feeding the larger content of the course somehow. So you're able to actually teach through the text using hypothesis annotation. And as I mentioned in my demo, that's what that demo instructor was doing by asking questions at specific points or asking students to bring in specific resources. There's all kinds of things you can do as an instructor using hypothesis to help clarify those key takeaways for your students. You can model what good annotations look like to you. You can ask questions of the students and have students answer specific parts of the text, and you can provide clarification. So if there's complicated language or this, place is really, there's a piece of the writing that's really dense, or if you see students in their annotations kind of asking a lot of questions and not quite sure, or maybe analyzing something in a direction that is not going quite the correct way, you're able to intervene in that very low stakes way and redirect students. So, similarly to that final point I was making, you can ask students to practice key skills related to problem solving. This is things like if you have complicated notation or syntax, um, or if you need to quote, like translate really technical passages, this means having students rewrite really technical information in their own words, helping students locate required information. All of these things are things that you can do through hypothesis that are going to help students get to those key takeaways sooner. Um, and our next sort of solution that we wanted to propose was the ability to determine engagement frequency. And what we mean by that is offering strategies to ensure engagement and annotation quality. I'm going to clarify this first point in the next slide, but providing examples and non-examples with your prompts, providing detailed feedback to students who are not meeting expectations. We do have ways to do that in our tool. You can leave a comment directly to a student to provide feedback. And the ability to highlight exemplary student posts for each annotation assignment. Now, I wanted to say, there's a couple of different modalities. Like if you're teaching in an online course environment, then through the tool itself, like right through Hypothesis, you can leave an annotation that is highlighting some of the really great points that your students have made. Um, but if you're teaching in person, you can use the hypothesis readings to kind of get a sense of the trends in the conversation. You can kind of see where students are getting hung up or asking a lot of questions. And you can use those to structure your in-class discussion. And in that discussion, you can highlight the really beneficial posts and annotations that students have made. I am going to check the Q&A one more time. Um, Okay, yeah, so those are questions I'll get to at the end here. Um, so I wanted to clarify what we mean by examples and non-examples, and the key point here is to connect the material back to other topics or points we have discussed in the course. So you might share with students like, hey, an example of a really meaningful annotation would include something like, this is a pretty clear example of gender performativity, which we talked about earlier in the course. This demonstrates an example of gender performativity because the author talks about how she feels pressured to behave a certain way as a mother, and if she doesn't follow these behaviors, she feels like she's being judged by others. So that's a pretty substantial, meaningful annotation. You might share that as an example with your students. And a non-example of a meaningful annotation might just be, this section reminds me of when we talked about gender performativity. It's doing the work of making a connection, but it's not really substantiating the connection in any way. So your annotations can teach students how to build sort of meaningful connections to the text in these ways. Other things that you can do to help kind of control like engagement and how frequently you ask students to engage, start the course off by annotating the syllabus. This is one of our most popular activity recommendations, if not the most popular activity recommendation. And especially in a summer course, when you provide students with your syllabus and right off the bat, you're asking them to annotate that syllabus, you are setting expectations for the course. So the expectation for the course means like, hey, we're going to use hypothesis in this course. And this is a space where your voice really does matter because if you leave annotations on the syllabus, I'm going to answer them either in a full course announcement or directly to your annotation or in our class discussion. But I'm going to look at the questions that you're asking and the comments you're making, and I'm going to address them. So this is a space where I, as your instructor, listen to you and elevate your voices and look forward to hearing from you. But more than that, it's giving students a chance to ask those questions about the syllabus directly and to everybody else's benefit. Um, it's giving students a chance to practice annotating before they even get into the content. So this is a really good way, like in that condensed term period, if you have students do the practice with hypothesis on your syllabus, then it's less likely that they're going to run into any issues on their first actual hypothesis assignment. So really good like scaffolding activity and also a way to indicate that ethos as an instructor that you do actually want to hear from the students and you're sort of celebrating their voices. Um, Quick check of the Q&A again here. Okay. Um, and then our favorite, ditching your discussion board. So discussion boards, I'm sure we've all tried these before. Um, Sometimes they're perceived as just busy work. They feel like forced or stale or stagnant. It's like we're asking you to participate in a discussion board because we feel like we're supposed to have some element of like engagement. So what Hypothesis does is it allows us to anchor the conversation right over that text. We don't have to do the work of talking about the text in the abstracted sense or like removed from the actual conversation anymore because students are going to annotate right over the piece of the text they want to talk about. And the tool is going to make that engagement far more organic, far more meaningful and substantiated because it is right over the text. So it's going to feel less stale to students and less stagnant, especially with our new at mentions feature. Because if students reply to each other and they mention the other student, um, then that student's going to get notified and be called back into the conversation. So we're just doing a lot of work to make organic conversations in ways that discussion boards are just, they kind of make it hard to accomplish that level of engagement. So you can also use the engagement and hypothesis assignments to identify teaching opportunities. This is again that idea that as you look at the students' annotations and you're seeing what parts they're gravitating towards or what questions they have, you can kind of teach through the text this way. And in a condensed period of time where you have less time with the students or you have to accomplish more faster, using hypothesis to address some of those misconceptions and teach directly through the text just allows you to accomplish more work in that in the environment of the hypothesis assignment, work that you might have to do otherwise through, let's say, an in-class conversation or an announcement or something like that. And this we hope does maintain student motivation, and the case studies that we've looked at are showing that yes, indeed, having hypothesis annotation maintains student motivation more than a discussion board might. So the last solution we wanted to pose was building community and knowledge co-creation. And I'll reiterate that, when I had the opportunity to join Hypothesis, this was really one of the main reasons that I was excited to do so because um, we all know it's hard, and especially in an online environment, it's hard to create class community. But our tool does really make that happen. So when we talk about building a community of knowledge creators through social annotation, what we're doing is we're incorporating hypothesis assignments into our course because it gives students a chance to incorporate their prior knowledge. So students will have a lot of different background maybe, around the content that you're studying in your course. Some students will know a lot more, some will know less, some will have been exposed to things in the past, some might not. And so those students that have previous knowledge, you're actually positioning them as being able to share that knowledge and make connections through their annotations. This is encouraging peer-to-peer learning. It's positioning students more as experts or at least as researchers. It's making a space for all of those student voices. I've sort of mentioned this before, but in an in-person class, it's hard to give all of the students a chance to talk, and not all students are inclined to talk in an in-person class. And and so a hypothesis in that environment is really giving all students more of a chance to participate in ways that they just may not otherwise be able to. Um, and I always like to talk to people about teaching students or coaching students on how to write meaningful annotations and replies, and especially on writing meaningful replies to their classmates. Um, I'm a big proponent of giving students some sort of framework. You don't have to use exactly the one that I have here on this slide, but some sort of framework for how to write a meaningful reply to their classmate. One such framework is the TAG protocol, TAG, tell some things you like, ask thoughtful questions, and give suggestions. So what we're really doing here is we're trying to minimize the amount of replies to annotations that just say, that's a great point, or some variation of that. What we want to do is coach students on how to take the thought provided by their classmate and really expand on it in a meaningful direction. So you might teach students to say something like, I really connect with what you said here, or I really was surprised by what you said, or what wowed me was, or I thought of X when you mentioned this other thing. And then from there, you ask thoughtful questions. While I really liked this point, I wasn't really sure what you meant over here. Or did you also consider this? Or why did you include this particular example maybe instead of some other example? And then give suggestions. In addition to the points you already made, you might consider this, or would you add this, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and I want to be clear, we're not coaching students to negate or argue or disprove their classmates. What we're doing is coaching students to be additive. So it's like you mentioned this really great point. In some ways, I might add to that great point. I might say, this also reminded me of something another student said, and I might mention that other student to pull them into the conversation. I might bring in an external resource. I'm like, this also kind of is in line with what you're talking about. Or I thought about this other reading that we saw earlier in class. And so I'm actually just adding to what the students already said. And the suggestions I'm giving, some critique is never a bad thing, but we're not trying to argue or disprove or anything like that. We're trying to elevate and expand what our classmates have offered. And so I do just like the idea of coaching students on how to write a meaningful reply, because otherwise we may see some of those replies that are just kind of not really adding anything or pushing the conversation along. I saw another question come in. Um, okay, so we'll address that at the end. And I've mentioned this a few times. So we have this new feature, at mentions. This is what we saw this in the demo environment already, but at mentions are going to allow students to directly engage. Student and faculty can tag users in annotations to draw attention and keep conversations focused. We can stay in the loop here, so email notifications alert users when they've been mentioned, no insights missed, and we can drive engagement. This app mentions encourages instructor-student interaction in the LMS and continues to bring learners back to the content. So this is another way that we can facilitate that engagement and that community building. Um, Similar to annotating the syllabus, which we saw earlier, we can annotate other course documents, things like instructions or study guides. This is a good way for students to collaboratively collect resources. If students have been misinterpreting certain information, this is a good chance to kind of correct whether they're misinterpreting instructions or they're misinterpreting, uh, the important content on a study guide. And particularly with study guides, uh, because we've maybe had hypothesis readings throughout the semester or the course session, uh, the study guide allows us to kind of put all of that content into our own shorter guide that we provide the students in advance of a project or exam. And because all of those things will now be listed in one place, students can start to do annotation work to build connections between those sources. Okay, so we just talked about summer courses and some of the challenges with those courses, and we've mentioned three different solutions that we believe Hypothesis really offers in the context of a summer course. We're about to wrap up the content portion of today, but before I do, I'm very, very excited to share with you all a new feature that we have coming out later this summer, and that is image annotation. Historically, Hypothesis has been tied to selectable text layers in PDFs or YouTube transcripts. Now, we're moving in the direction of being able to annotate images. And I want to show you a bit of what that looks like. So, on the right-hand side of this slide, we're seeing an image of the Starry Night, the classic painting. And what the user has done is they've drawn a rectangular square around a portion of the annotation. And that portion is going to now, or I'm sorry, a portion of the image. And that portion is going to become their annotation. Then they're able to add text and comment on why they selected that portion of that particular image. And it's going to function otherwise entirely like annotations in our tool already function. So, some things to know about image annotation. Uh, we're going to be able to let students and instructors add comments directly on images in PDFs. So we're still working on PDFs, but if those PDFs have images or graphs or tables or other data or yeah, any sort of image, we are now going to be able to annotate over those. Um, this is going to work with regular and scanned PDFs. So even if your PDF doesn't have a selectable text layer, we're still going to be able to annotate the images. And besides this like rectangular or square sort of selecting sort of feature that we're seeing in this image, we also are going to have the ability to use pins. Um, and so I'm seeing some questions come in here, and I just saw my teammates join, so I'm just making sure there's nothing that I need to answer urgently. I will get to these questions at the end. Okay. Um, and I see some of my colleagues join the call, so if there's something that you need me for, please feel free to interrupt me. Um, we are going to have the ability to annotate using pins or the selectable sort of like rectangular selection that we see in the image. Uh, and this is fully integrated into the hypothesis sidebar, just like text annotations. So please follow along. If you're getting emails from us already, please follow along because throughout the summer, we're going to get closer and closer to the launch date. If you want to hear more specifics on the date that this is going to launch, I think we'll be publishing that information relatively soon. Yeah, this is rolling out this summer. We're very excited because this will open up opportunities not only in art and visual heavy fields, art history, those sorts of things, but also in STEM fields where you're again looking at uh, anatomy or graphs or data or even math. Like if you're looking at equations, you'll be able to use our pin annotation to annotate over equations now. And we're just very excited about that. So please keep following along with our our blogs and emails and things like that. We'll be sharing a lot more soon. Um, and before I stop talking, and well, I'll keep talking, but I'll just get to the Q&A. I wanted to share some resources. Actually, let me go ahead and put this in the chat again. We now have, yeah, we have about 73 people in here, 76, no, 73 people in here. I'm sharing our slides again for those of you that are here. We have links to all of our annotation starter assignments. Some of these are the same links that you saw earlier in those sample assignments that I mentioned in the slides with the little like uh, pencil and paper icon. Um, we offer pedagogical support to our hypothesis users. Again, that includes customized trainings, one-on-one instructional design consultations. It also includes webinars like the one that you're attending. We've got faculty panel series called Liquid Margins. We've got resources for social annotation, Hypothesis Educator Forum. If you email support at Hypothesis, note this dot between the S and the IS at the end. Uh, we offer technical support. And I'll mention to you all our Hypothesis Academy. This is a 2-week asynchronous course experience that's designed it's showing you how to do like a deeper dive into the hypothesis tool. We have a few different academies. One of them is missing from this list, actually. We have Social Annotation 101, we have Social Annotation in the Age of AI, and we have another one called Social Annotation for Student Success. Later this month, we have Social Annotation 101. Again, 2-week asynchronous experience. It'll take about 3 to 5 hours of your time. We'll be working with faculty members across all of our different partner schools. And as long as you are at a partner school, this is available at no extra charge for you. So we'll offer a hypothesis certified educator credential at the end of that experience. And this will just be a nice chance to take a really deep dive on the tool. They all have different outcomes. Social Annotation 101, for example, you're going to leave with a ready-made hypothesis assignment that you're ready to use in your course. Um, okay, and of course we have our partner workshops. I'm going to go ahead and copy this link and add this link into the chat for those of you that are already Hypothesis partners. Please join us for our upcoming workshops. We have a whole summer series actually that you'll be able to find on this list where we're offering some things that we don't usually offer during the academic year. So we'd love to see you at those. And I think, lastly, for those of you on the call that may not be Hypothesis customers yet, but are interested in becoming Hypothesis customers, we do currently offer a Kickstart promotion. So this will include discounted pricing for first-time users, no cost implementation, the ability to use Hypothesis immediately, all of the benefits that come with LMS integration, and as I mentioned before, free access to things like Hypothesis Academy and to the workshops led by Jess and I. Um, uh, Jess and me, the English teacher, and me just something like got a flag in my head about that. Okay, you can reach out to education at Hypothesis to learn more, and you can also scan the QR code on this slide directly, and that will get you in touch with our sales team. So I'll leave this up for just a moment longer. And that's going to bring us actually to the end of our presentation portion today. I want to thank you all again for coming. You can email success@Hypothesis to get in touch with those of us on the customer success team. If you're interested in more workshops or in one-on-one support using Hypothesis, again, do note it's success@Hypothesis, but do note that dot between the S and the IS at the end of Hypothesis. And now I want to actually get into our Q&A session. So I will leave this QR code up, but I'm going to start working through the QA or Q&A. And I see that some were answered, so I really appreciate my team for taking some of these on as I spoke. Yes, I see some people mentioning there's art history and instructional design. So I'm being really excited. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we're excited too. And yes, for music and sheet music, yeah, you can use our pin annotation. You'll be able to annotate over that. Okay, so I'm going to look at our unanswered questions here. Um, Somebody wrote, Susan wrote, I love the example of a professor putting an engagement prompt into the hypothesis overlay. Can you do that with a single post if you divide students into groups, or do you have to put the prompt into each group? Okay, so So, Susan, there's a couple different ways you can go about this. Most of our LMSs allow you to add your instructions to add like as an in prompt format before students launch the hypothesis activity, so that that's the first thing they see. Students will, whether they're in groups or not, they're going to be able to see your annotations that you've left on the assignment. So if you're teaching through annotations or adding assignment prompts through annotations, you can certainly do that. The other feature we have are called page notes, and page notes are essentially annotations that are not anchored to specific moments in the text. So some people will also include instructions in page notes, but I do typically see I see those. Oh, and it sounds like you're talking about specifically engagement prompts instead of necessarily assignment instructions. So I'm a big fan of assignment instructions up front before they launch the activity. But engagement prompts, um, yeah, certainly you can annotate your hypothesis assignment, and your students, even if they're in groups, are going to see those. So I really thanks for your question. Uh, Eric is asking if we have rubrics. It's one thing to measure quantifiable responses. How about quality? Okay, yes. So I think that you're referring with that follow up there. It's important to measure quantifiable responses, but how about quality? That's a great question. The reason that we with our automatic participation grader tool that I mentioned earlier, we do tally up the total number of annotations and replies. And this is speaking to a few different things. Um, for classes with really large enrollment, the tally just allows you to kind of like focus on spot checking responses. But if you have such a large enrollment that it's harder to keep track of um, the how to assign grades, we just wanted to make the ability to measure participation really easy. Um, we uh, we if you're a Canvas user, we integrate with Canvas's rubric function. But otherwise, you can certainly build rubrics for students. We recommend looking at hypothesis as formative assessment, meaning this is a lower stakes scaffolding assignment, something that we're using just to like get students closer and closer to those assessments where we're really looking at whether the students have like started to acquire the knowledge we're trying to teach. Hypothesis is existing more at that like initial exposure to the content. And so when it comes to evaluating and quality, we're big fans um, of shorter rubrics with qualitative, and especially, you're asking about quality. So qualitative statements, but we don't really want to overdo it because we're really looking to give students some meaningful feedback, and mostly to celebrate engagement at the early stages. But yes, you certainly can write a rubric with qualitative statements. And actually, that's going to be part of our Hypothesis Academy 101. We do a deeper dive into our recommendations for like rubrics that you could use with hypothesis assignments. So I really appreciate your point, looking at quantity and quality. I'll also mention that in terms of our auto grader, that tally that we have, that tells you how many activities and replies that students have left. If you've synced that dashboard up with our auto grader, you have the option to send those grades that the auto grader assigns back to your LMS or not. Um, so there are plenty of people that use the auto grader function as a benchmark and just like a check-in, but then they actually will still go in and manually assign their own grades because they want to look at the quality of student responses first. So it's kind of, I took your question quite a few different directions, but yes, I'm very happy to have a longer conversation around assessment and hypothesis, but I really appreciate your question. So I'm going to mark those as answered. And then the next one up was, can AI be used to fabricate responses to the text? As in, can AI be used to cheat? I mean, the short answer is certainly, but one of the reasons that we are such big fans of this tool and the ability to annotate and anchor conversations directly in the text is we're really hoping that the stakes of a hypothesis assignment are low enough and engaging enough that students aren't going to necessarily see much reason or benefit in having AI generate responses for them. Um, and so because we're operating at that formative assessment stage, uh, we're very we're doing what like the learning science tells us we need to do in order to decrease the likelihood that students are going to be inclined to use AI for their answers. Um, so I'm gonna just like leave it at that for now because we do have a whole training on leveraging social annotation in the age of AI where we go way more into depth about like what's causing people to use AI, what are the benefits of framing reading in certain ways, what's the role of a tool like Hypothesis when AI is so readily available. So we'll talk about that a whole lot more in that training, but I'll leave my answer there for now. Thank you for asking. Um, Next up, Meg, I actually don't know the answer to that. If the PDF contains alt text, will Hypothesis read that alt text? I don't know the answer to that right now, and I'm wondering if my team could try to get in touch with our product team and get an answer to that. Um, and if not, we'll try to follow up with you later. Part of this is just that we are still rolling out, we're still finalizing the image annotation. So there's just certain aspects of it that I'm not sure about yet. But thank you for answering. It's a really good question. Um, Next up, we have Christine. Anyone working with libguides and annotation, having students annotate a guide? Um, I am going to just actually invite people in the chat to answer you. That sounds like a question for the group. So thank you also for asking. And if there's more you need from me on that question, do let me know. But okay. Thank you. The next one I see is how do we register for the next upcoming hypothesis meeting? The best link to follow is our link to our hypothesis partner workshops. That's going to tell you all of our upcoming workshops. I believe there's another link for events, which would include things like this webinar, which maybe my team can grab for you. But plenty of ways to get in touch with us. Go ahead and follow that partner workshops link that I added to the chat. I will go ahead and add it again. And that will tell you which kinds of workshops we have coming up, especially because we're coming into the summer session and we're doing some things a little bit differently. Eric, yes, there is a recording, and I believe my team plans to send that out to people who registered. Okay, that brings us to the end of all of our questions. I just want to give people a minute to ask any others if you have any. And I'll check the chat. It looks like most people have put their questions in the Q&A though. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you again so much for joining us today. We are very excited about our app mentions, very excited about our image annotation rollout, and very, very excited to support you in your summer courses. So if you would like one-on-one support, please get in touch with the customer success team. Again, that's success at Hypothesis. And one of us will be in touch to help you. Again, whether that is an interest in workshops at your institution or one-on-one instructional design support that we can offer. So thank you all so much for coming. I think that brings us to the end of our session for today.